Get a full body reset anywhere you go with Dr. Teal's Magnesium Spray. It's a concentrated magnesium blend of pure Epsom and Dead Sea salts, all bundled up in a convenient on-the-go bottle. A few quick sprays will relax your body and mind and keep you feeling recharged all day long. It's wellness you can feel, and you can find it in your local bath aisle. Dr. Teal's. Yep, you needed that.
Hey listeners, this is Peter and welcome back to the History Shorts. Today's episode is brought to you by the Podcast Republic, your ultimate listening app. Discover and subscribe to thousands of podcasts from around the world. Download Podcast Republic today, available on Google Play and the Apple App Store. Today on History Shorts, on June 15th, 1859, an American farmer named Lyman Cutler stepped out of his cabin on a small island in the Pacific Northwest and found a large black pig rooting through his potato garden. This was not the first time this happened. He had actually warned the pig's owner, but he had been ignored. So Lyman Cutler did what any frustrated farmer might do in these circumstances. He shot the pig. What followed was a diplomatic crisis that brought the United States and Great Britain to the brink of armed conflict. Two nations, two armies, two naval fleets facing off on a rocky island in the San Juan archipelago over the body of one deceased British hog. Today's History Brief covers some 1930s Great Depression era slang. A quick word from our sponsors.
Support for the show comes from Public, the investing platform for those who take it seriously. On Public, you can build a multi-asset portfolio of stocks, bonds, options, crypto, and now generated assets, which allow you to turn any idea into an investable index with AI. It all starts with your prompt. From renewable energy companies with high free cash flow to semiconductor suppliers growing revenue over 20% year over year, you can literally type any prompt and put the AI to work. It screens thousands of stocks, builds a one-of-a-kind index, and lets you backtest it against the S&P 500. Then you can invest in a few clicks. Generated assets are like ETFs with infinite possibilities, completely customizable and based on your thesis, not someone else's. Go to public.com/podcast and earn an uncapped 1% bonus when you transfer your portfolio. That's public.com/podcast. Paid for by Public Investing. Brokerage services by Open to the Public Investing Inc. Member FINRA and SIPC. Advisory services by Public Advisors LLC, SEC registered advisor. Generated assets is an interactive analysis tool. Output is for informational purposes only and is not an investment recommendation or advice. Complete disclosures available at public.com/disclosures.
This day in history. On April 5th, 1792, President George Washington cast the first presidential veto in U.S. history, rejecting a bill related to congressional appointment and establishing an important executive precedent. On April 5th, 1951, Julius and Ethel Rosenberg were sentenced to death for passing atomic secrets to the Soviet Union, one of the most controversial espionage cases of the entire Cold War. Story of the day. So let's start with the border situation in the Pacific Northwest in 1859. It was, to put it diplomatically, quite a mess. The Oregon Treaty of 1846 had resolved the long-standing dispute between the United States and Britain over the vast Oregon Territory, dividing the Oregon Territory along the 49th parallel from the Rocky Mountains to the Pacific coast. It seemed straightforward enough on paper. The problem was a cluster of islands sitting in the waters between the mainland and Vancouver Island, the San Juan archipelago. The treaty said that the border would run through the channel separating those islands from the mainland. There were two channels. The Americans said the border ran through the Rosario Strait, which put San Juan Island on the American side. The British said the border ran through the Haro Strait, which put San Juan Island on their side. Both nations had legal arguments, and neither was willing to concede. And so by 1859, San Juan Island had both American settlers and employees of the British Hudson Bay Company living on this island simultaneously, each side quietly insisting that the island was theirs, and neither side doing anything dramatic enough to force the issue. Well, at least until the pig. The pig in question belonged to the Hudson Bay Company, a large, free ranging black boar with a well established habit of wandering wherever it pleased. Lyman Cutler was an American farmer who had settled on the island and had taken considerable trouble to establish his potato garden. The pig had taken considerable trouble to destroy it. When Cutler shot the animal, he initially offered to pay compensation to the Hudson Bay Company for their loss. The British authorities on the island, however, had much different ideas. They threatened to arrest Cutler for destruction of company property. Cutler's response to this was to appeal to the American military for protection. And here's where a dispute over a pig became something considerably more alarming. The American military commander in the region was Brigadier General William S. Harney, a man not especially celebrated in the historical record for his diplomatic temperament. Harney sent a company of soldiers to San Juan Island under Captain George Pickett. Yes, that George Pickett. The same George Pickett who would lead the catastrophic Confederate charge at Gettysburg 4 years later. In 1859, however, he was just a U.S. Army captain, and his orders were to protect American settlers on San Juan Island. He landed with 66 men and established a camp. The British response was to send warships, three of them initially, and then even more. At the peak of the standoff, British naval forces in the waters around San Juan Island numbered 5 warships carrying 167 guns and roughly 2,000 men. Facing them on the beach, Pickett's force, which had grown to around 460 soldiers with 14 cannons. Pickett, to his considerable credit, did not blink. He informed the British that he had orders to hold the island and he intended to do so. The British naval commander, Rear Admiral Robert Baines, looked at the situation. Two nations on the edge of armed conflict over a small island, initiated by the death of a pig, and he made what history records as an admirably sane decision. He refused to open fire. He reportedly told his superiors that he had no intention of involving two great nations in a war over a squabble that could be resolved by diplomacy. News of the standoff reached Washington and London at roughly the same time. Both governments were, to use the technical term, alarmed. President James Buchanan dispatched General Winfield Scott, the most senior officer in the U.S. Army, a man who had been winning wars since like War of 1812, to the Pacific Northwest to sort things out. Scott negotiated a joint military occupation of San Juan Island. Both nations would now maintain a small military presence on opposite ends of the island, while diplomats worked out the actual border question. The British encampment went up on the north end of the island, while the American camp went up on the south end. And then, remarkably, they proceeded to get along quite well. The two camps exchanged social visits. They celebrated each other's national holidays, they shared food, drink, and apparently had a great deal of good humor about the whole situation that they found themselves in. The joint occupation lasted, however, for 12 years. The border question was finally settled in 1872 by international arbitration, with Kaiser Wilhelm I of Germany serving as the neutral party. He awarded San Juan Island to the United States. The British garrison struck its flag, boarded its ships, and sailed away. No shots had been fired in anger, and no one had been killed. The entire crisis, the warships, the troops, the diplomatic cables flying between Washington and London, had been triggered by one American farmer, one wandering pig, and one very bad morning in a potato garden. The following comes to us from Strange History by the editors of Portable Press. Let's talk about some slang from 1930s. Frog skin meant $1. Juicy meant enjoyable. An egg was a crude person. Abercrombie meant a know-it-all. Hot squat meant the electric chair. If you were all wet, that meant you were no good. A bigot was a conceited person. City juice was a glass of water. If you were a crumb, you were a loser. If you were a sweet patootie, well, that one might be obvious, you were an attractive woman. If you were a wet sock, you were a social misfit. A bouncing Betty was a car, specifically a Ford. A Brody was a mistake, and a jungle was a hobo camp, which later would be also called a Hooverville. If you blew your wig, that meant you were very excited. And if you picked up a grounder, that meant a cigarette that you found on the ground. A Chicago overcoat was a coffin, and a dead hoofer was a bad dancer. Abyssinia meant I'll be seeing you. Thank you so much for spending some time with me today and helping make this little show such a mighty success. If you are enjoying this show and would like to help with its production, you can always donate a few dollars at buymeacoffee.com or become a Patreon member to enjoy these episodes ad-free. Both links can be found on our website at www.historyshortpodcast.com. Have a great rest of your day, and I will talk to you all again tomorrow.